Hey there, Wendy here with Jazzydoodledesigns, and today we're going to be doing the color along that you guys picked. You picked Symphony of Cute Animals, which I have to say, it was a really close race. Symphony of Cute Animals had 30%, and the Denise Flett book, the bird one, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. That Birds in the Forest, that's what it's called. It had 29%. And then the Kirby Rosanna's book, World Within Worlds, I believe, was the third one, and it had something like 26%. So it was extremely close this week. But you did pick Symphony of Cute Animals, you picked Neocolor 2s, and you picked polychromos colored pencils. So I have chosen this adorable page. I'm almost afraid to even do this, but I just love this picture with the little animals, and they're taking off with the owl, and just they have their little capes, and I'm really excited to do this. So grab your pencils and let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to start with the sky and this moon. And I'm going to be using, first of all, I use Neocolor 2s because they go down really quick and they provide a really nice base for my colored pencils, so I don't have to do as many layers with my pencils. So I'm going to be doing this night sky using charcoal gray. So I really want this segment of the sky to be really dark. So I'm going to go in with charcoal gray and allow that to dry. And then I'm going to go over it with indigo blue. And that'll make the darkest part of this sky. And then next step will be night blue and blue. And that'll make up the actual sky. My thought is I'd like it to be dark along this bottom section and the left side, and then this section in the middle and kind of highlighting these little animals will be more this blue color. It'll be a much lighter color. And then the actual moon I'm going to color in this light blue and night blue in the dark shadowy parts of the moon, and just having it kind of have a light halo around it, working its way to dark. So let's start with that. So charcoal gray, indigo blue, night blue, blue, and light blue. Okay, starting out, in the opener I said I was going to lay down this charcoal gray and I was going to activate it and let it dry and then go back over it with the indigo blue. And since then I changed my mind and decided I didn't really need to do that step. I'm just putting a piece of white paper behind so that like when you color on the edge of the page, it has a place to go, and I don't color on another page or my desk. So you can see I laid down that charcoal gray, and then I'm going over it with the indigo blue. You can mix colors like that with Neocolors, and I really enjoy that about the Neocolors. And so as long as you just don't go too deep, too heavy with it, you can mix your colors as you go. And so you'll see that as I come in with this, when I go to the next color, I will start to lighten my hand a little bit. Here I go back in with the charcoal again, because I realized I wanted it darker here at the bottom. So that's what I'm doing here. But as you go to blend, just lighten your hand, much like you do with colored pencils. You're going to, those two right there, I tried to lighten it up a little bit before I go in. And you can do this more precisely than I did. But one of the things I like about using Neocolors, or Neocolor 2s, I should be explicit because these are water soluble and Neocolor 1s are not. So these are Neocolor 2s. And what I like about using them is I don't have to be super precise because I'm only using them as a base. And the idea is to get rid of the white of the paper. And one of the things that I wish I would do, and I'll just tell you this now, is I kind of struggled with how I wanted to do these buildings, and I wanted the blue to kind of, you've already seen the final, so I'm not spoiling the ending here, but I wanted a little bit of blue to cast down on these, but I was afraid of going too dark to begin with, and I was afraid that if I went dark, I wouldn't be able to put the blue in. And so I start off on all of my buildings with that really light, I think like warm gray 1 or 3, or maybe a combination. But therefore, when I do my final round with the colored pencils, I just have that light background behind it, so it doesn't do a whole lot to eliminate those little white dots that you sometimes get. And I debated on using like a blender or if I should do more layers. This paper, it's good paper, but it isn't quite as heavy as like a Hannah Carlson or something like that. And I just felt like with the water and then the number of layers, I just really didn't want to do yet another layer of the Prismacolor. So my choice would be that I could go in with a blender and smooth it all out. And that's just a personal decision I think everyone has to make themselves as to at what point are they satisfied with their picture. And for the most part, I feel like I am satisfied with it. The sky could be a little smoother and the buildings could be smoother, but there's a part of me that kind of likes the rough appearance of the buildings because it almost lends itself to a stucco. You know, the appearance of stucco. And maybe I'm just tricking myself because I'm lazy and don't want to go back in and smooth it all out. I don't know, but I'm happy with this picture. The buildings didn't turn out exactly the way I pictured them in my mind. I wanted the glow of the windows to shine on them, but I wanted to really make it look like a night scene. And I hope that I did that. But like I said, it didn't turn out exactly like I pictured it in my mind. Has that ever happened to you? I'm sure it's happened to all of us. But sometimes we're more pleased than others with the results. But as far as what I'm doing now, I'm going in and activating. If you notice, I started with the lightest, which is the moon, and I go in and activate all of that first because it's really easy if you start out with the dark and you move up into the light accidentally, you will push that color into the light, and there isn't a whole lot of fixing that. Sometimes if it's still wet, you can use more water and push it back, but a lot of times it will dry because the goal when you're doing this is to not use too much water, because if you start using too much water then you can get bleed through and different things. So it's kind of the the 3 little bears of water. You want enough to activate it, but not enough that you're going to get bleed through. And if you're doing this, I missed that little piece on the side of the building, so take your blue and drop it down there on the right hand side. But you can see that I go from light to dark. Sorry, this is the time of day that Ellie gets a little sassy. She's ready for me to take her out front. So she's got her toy in here and she's throwing it at me, hoping I'll play with her because she's a spoiled little girl. Actually, it's not her toy, it's her little chew. But anyway, so I go in with my lightest colors, blending into the darker. And as you can see as you go along, especially as we get to that dark area, you know, I'm not terribly worried about that it's not a smooth blend. If you only want to use neo colors, you can certainly do that. And what I would do is after this dries completely, I would go back in and hold your the Neo Color 2 in your hand and use your water brush and actually scrub your brush onto the Neo Color 2 and then apply it to the page, and that will help you smooth out your Neo Color, because I know a lot of people get to this point and they are just like, well, this is streaky and kind of ugly. And that's what I found to be really the best way to kind of smooth that out, is just to wet the brush and then put it directly to the Neo Color and then go directly back into the page and apply color that way, and that will help you smooth out your blends. But if you're going to use colored pencil over it, it really doesn't matter because it really won't show through your colored pencil. So you can just not worry too much about it. And once again, on the left hand side here of this building is a little tiny strip of blue. So while you're doing this, go ahead and pop over there and get that, or otherwise you're just going to have to do it later after you've put all your blues away, which is what happened to me. Okay, so my grandson went back to school. He started Monday, I think, and he's starting 3rd grade. Super exciting. But I just can't believe it's time for school to start already. I mean, I feel like summer just started. And I'm sure all the parents out here watching this are like, no, we're ready. Believe me, we're ready. But, you know, since I don't have kids at home, it just seems to be flying by. This week is super hot here in Colorado. It's like in the 90s, which I gotta say, this year our summer has been so mild and very rainy. We've had way more rain than we normally get, and so therefore it's been a lot cooler. But this week it's we're going to be in the 90s all week, and it's hot. So that's part of why I don't want to take Ellie out right now, because it's still pretty hot. So the one thing I'll caution you about with the Neo Color 2s, I did put the white in. Be careful when you apply your white, because what happens is you pick up other colors on your white and then you go to put it in your nice little white area and it'll smudge blue or red or whatever color you used last. And ask me how I know. I've done that many times and it's extremely annoying. So what I do is I just always make sure to wipe off my white like on a paper towel or something, and just make sure you don't have any. So I apologize for my chicken scratch here. I need to make up cards for my Neocolor 2s, but for now, I'm just doing the chicken scratch method. I hope this is helpful to have these on a piece of paper this way. I know somebody mentioned to me the other day that one of my old tutorials, I had put the colors up on the screen, and what happens is sometimes I'll go back in and I'll edit something. Let's say that I put all the colors in throughout the whole video, and then I go back in and I see where maybe there's a long pause where, I don't know, maybe I'm answering the phone or doing something where I'm not coloring, and I don't want you guys to be bored during that segment. And so what would happen would be I would delete that little piece, but what would happen is it wouldn't change. So let's say I took out 30 seconds, it wouldn't take out 30 seconds of where the colors were. So the timing of the colors would now be off 30 seconds. And so all of the colors would be off. And once I upload to YouTube, I can't, the only thing I could do is completely delete the whole thing. I would lose all my watch hours. I would lose all the comments. I would lose all the interaction. And then I would have to upload a completely new video. And so I really don't want to do that. So I apologize. And all I can say is that when you're doing these videos, this is probably, most of this is sped up 3 times on this one. And so you figure this video is an hour and a half. That means that it's at least 4.5 hours of video. A lot of other videos can be twice that long. When you start dealing with that much footage, it's really easy for something to get out of sync. And so I've decided to try and do it this way. The downside to doing it this way is that I'm not as zoomed in, but I feel like I'm trying to balance not only my time, because when I used to put those like the names up, I would spend a lot. I'm talking hours and hours of time doing that, because it just takes time. And then I have to be so diligent that I don't mess it up, and that takes time. And then I have to re-watch the video to make sure it's all okay. And as you can imagine, by the time I'm done editing a video like this, so I've got 5 or 6 hours of coloring into this video. I've already got several hours into figuring out what I wanted it to look like before I even started. Then I've got at least 2 hours into editing it. You can imagine that I really don't want to sit and at regular speed watch this video for another hour and a half. So I tend to scan through it and make sure nothing jumps out at me as being off. So I feel like as I go, I will get better at this. I also struggle with, like this one, this picture was a little more straightforward for me. I was able to not jump around in my coloring as much. When I do like a 2-page spread, or I do something that has a lot of different elements, it's extremely hard for me to be like, okay, I'm going to go in and do all the things that are orange, right? My brain just doesn't really work that way on those types of pages, whereas on this one, it was really clear to me. There's 3 orange capes. We're going to color them all at the same time. But anyway, I hope I'm not boring you. I just try and I want people to have value, and I want you to enjoy my color alongs and get something out of them, whether it's background noise while you're coloring, whether it's just seeing how I put together my color combinations or how I do a certain technique. I just want people to find value, and it makes me feel bad when things are not perfect and not useful. So all I can ask of you is to be patient with me. Feel free, please let me know when things aren't. The person that mentioned that to me, I have to say, was so polite about it and was, thanked me for my time and said they enjoyed my my picture and everything. But I think it's important that I know those things too so that I can improve. So I, shout out to her for taking the time to comment and let me know. And I always welcome your feedback, and I'm always super grateful when you do it in a way that doesn't make me cry. Because I honestly almost didn't do a YouTube channel because I can take criticism. I can't take when people are mean to me. That's why I couldn't do a political channel or anything that has to do with a lot of controversy, because the public in general is just mean, and I just don't have the kind of personality that can let that roll off my back. And I have been so grateful to all of you that are so nice to me and say nice things. And when you do have criticisms or advice or critiques, that you've been just sweet about it, because I do want to improve, and you telling me whether it's that you don't prefer music, or whether it's the color alongs are too long or they're out of sync or whatever it is. I'm always open to hearing the feedback. So here I'm just adding just a touch of color to this owl, because I want the owl to read white, but sometimes you have to add other colors so it doesn't look like it's just not colored. I also want to offer an apology here, because I honestly thought the entire page was in the camera the whole time. So somehow, I don't know if it got zoomed in inadvertently or whatever, but a little portion, maybe 1.5 inches of the bottom of the page is not on. It's not in camera right now. So I apologize, but basically I'm going in with the Sahara yellow and just adding the yellow to all of the windows. And then I go in with the darker yellow down at the bottom, and then I just kind of pick one side and I just add a little touch of the saffron. And it's just to make the windows kind of look like they glow a little bit. And I just kind of like how it looks. You certainly wouldn't have to do this, or you could just do the yellow if you don't like the look of the more orange color. And I didn't do the orange color in every window. I did it more towards the bottom. So like on the windows that had 6 windows, I just tended to put it in the lower ones. Up here at the top, I wish I would have kind of anticipated a little bit differently that lantern. You'll see later in the video, I'm going to actually erase part of the sky there to the left hand side, because I want that yellow to kind of spill out into the sky a little bit and onto that little chimney steeple thing that's there. And then as I activate these, you can tell I'm not being super careful, and I really pull down the color onto the building because I want that yellow to kind of splash down. Now it's not as important with the Neocolor 2s as it is when you do your colored pencil. However, I have found in my life, just like with the lantern, if I don't do it on my base layer, when I go in with my colored pencils, I will lose sight of my overall objective and go in with I'll go in with my color and color right over it, and I will forget to, that I want to spill that color down until I already, like for example right there, I didn't do that, and then I colored right underneath that window. So in that one, I just don't have the light spilling out, which is fine. But I know that had I pulled it down with the Neocolor 2, then I would have been more careful when I put my building on. And if I were to do this again, knowing what I know now, I probably would have used a darker tone on the building on the left and the right, made it a darker base layer, if that makes sense. But sometimes you just have to start light and add different colors, because I may have ended up with a totally different color brown without that base layer of the beige, because each base layer, especially with polychromos, because they are more translucent, the base layer will kind of bleed through and change the overall tone of the color that you're using. Now, if this base layer was pink, for example, and I went in with blue, I would probably get a purple cast. And so if I have beige and I go in with sepia over the top, it is going to change that sepia to a more beigey sepia. I hope that makes sense. So I like overall how this came out. Once again, it just didn't come out exactly the way I pictured it in my mind. And I guess that's okay too. So later on, so I don't bore the crap out of you, especially as we get out of the Neocolor 2s, I am going to do an adult coloring habit tag and answer those 10 questions so that, I'm not just literally telling you what I'm doing. Sometimes I think I like when I watch an artist and they're telling me why they do certain things that they do. I can see that they're adding yellow, or that they're, adding sepia or whatever. But I also like to hear their thought process behind why they chose that color. And quite honestly, I chose this beige color because I knew I wanted that blue cast on the building, and I was afraid that if I just went in with sepia, that I wouldn't get any of that, like it wouldn't show up well. Okay, so what else? This is the hardest part about coloring longs, is that I know a lot of you guys like talking, so I try really hard, because I enjoy it too. Like if I go on someone's channel, I enjoy the chat. But when you're by yourself, it's sometimes hard to maintain that that one-sided conversation. But last weekend we went up into the mountains. That was really nice, getting out of the heat and doing a little camping. And by camping, I mean we have a Sprinter van we converted, so it's kind of like a little baby RV, and so I'm not roughing it anymore. I did that for a lot of years, and I've just decided I don't want to do that anymore. I want to sleep in a bed, and I want to be able to get out of the weather when need be and cook on a stove if it's raining outside or if the wind's blowing, because I have struggled through the years for, the afternoon or early evening rain shower where you're trying to make dinner and the wind's blowing out the little cooker. So I do like the option of cooking inside now, and definitely not pitching a tent and sleeping outside anymore. And Ellie is such an outdoor dog. She loves the outdoors. So her and Lonnie go on huge hikes, and she just loves it. And she listens really well, so I can pretty much just, she's always off leash, even in our yard. I have her really well trained to where she will run to the sidewalk and then she will wait for me, barking and jump spinning the whole time to encourage me to move faster, but to make sure that I can look across the street and know that no cars are coming. And then once I give her the signal, then she runs. And she likes to run we live on a cul-de-sac, so she gets the run of the cul-de-sac, and she makes sure that we don't have any bunnies or squirrels in any of the neighbor yards, and the neighbors all like her and enjoy her, so that isn't an issue. And I do stay out there with her, so it's not, I don't want you to think I just like open the door and leave her for an hour. But when we go up in the mountains and stuff, it's really nice because I can have her off leash the entire time and not really have to worry about her running away or anything like that. So she stays close, and I would say 95% of the time she stays within where I can see her. And when she does get a little far to where that I can't see her, I'll give a whistle, and she comes back to see like what's up. And so that's really nice, and she just lives for that. So there she is, squeaking her toy for you. She's hoping that you'll go play with her. She doesn't seem to understand that I want a video and that nobody wants to hear her squeak her toy and that Mama's busy right now. I'm sure none of you with pets can relate to this at all. We do spoil our pets, don't we? Here I zoomed in just because my big fat head got in the way, so I thought I would cut it out, and that is a small spot, so that way you can kind of see what I'm doing. But so there's a couple of books that are coming out that I saw. I mean, I think Rita Berman has a book that's coming out from Africa. So it's like her Europe and her Asia book, only it's going to be Africa, and I'm not really sure when that's coming out. Next year, Kirby Rosanis is coming out with a new book, and I understand it's not a compilation book. It looks like it's something like Wicked Fairy Tales or something like that. The picture that I saw is like kind of like the Snow White queen queen's hand on an apple type of image. So that ought to be pretty cool. I like Kirby, and I really enjoy working in his books. They are definitely a labor of love because they're almost all the pages are 2 pages, and even the ones that aren't, there's a lot of detail, which personally I enjoy, and I feel like he gives me a lot of guidance in the book. So I like working in them, but I know some people get very intimidated by them. I just did a 2-page spread, a dragon page, and I was going to make it into a color along, but number 1, it was really, really long. And then 2, I lost a big piece of the color along, and I thought I was filming, and I guess I had accidentally hit the record, so when I hit the record again, it stopped recording. So then I didn't record a huge chunk of it, and that felt really weird to me. So I just broke down how to do the scales, and that is on the channel, and I felt like that was something that at least I could salvage out of that color along. But I really enjoyed doing the page, and I used ink tints and polychromos, I think. No, maybe it was Prismacolor. I think it was Prismacolor. Yes. So I used ink tints and Prismacolor in that one, but I don't know, like, people, like, I've watched Karen with My Colorful Country Life, and she does such a beautiful job with the Kirby pages, but she's really organized. Like, in her brain, she's like, oh, I'm going to use all of the green now. And I don't know if she maybe colors that page in advance so she knows where all that stuff is going to go, or what she does, but I just struggle to be that organized. So then I feel like when you get into those really, really long color alongs, that y'all might want to kill me. So we'll see. I may do one in the future. But you can see I kind of jump around, like I'm working on the broom, now I'm down on the windows. Part of that is because when you work with Neocolor 2s, once you activate with your water, then you want to let it dry before you put any more color down. So like on that broom, I put the yellow, the golden ochre in, and then I am going to add some other colors to it, but I definitely don't want to do that when it's wet, or it will become very bold, which is not always the look that you're going for. So there's some books coming out soon that I'm pretty excited about. Matchstick Mouse has one, and there's a flip through on my channel. It's called Pumpkin Party Coloring Book, and you should definitely check it out because it has some different paper than I have seen the other Matchstick Mouse books have. So that's interesting. Joanna Basford has Small Victories. That's coming out. I think she also has like a special edition Secret Garden one coming out by the end of the year. Kirby has, I talked about the new one that's coming out, but he also has one called Color Universe that is a compilation book. So if you're interested in those, Joseph Cannonberg has Mythographia Labyrinth coming out. Millie Murata has a compilation book coming out. If you're into pop manga, there's one coming out at the end of October called Beauties and Beasties. One I'm excited about is Teresa Goodrich. She has Christmas Gnomes coming out September 13th. So I'm excited about that. Those little stinking gnomes get me every time. She also has one called Afternoon Tea, and that comes out in November. And I think that's going to be another one of those that just has really nice, maybe outdoor scenes, maybe table and pastry and stuff like that. And I can get behind coloring some pastries and stuff. So Mythagoria's got a book coming out, and along with that, Alan Robert has one coming out, I want to say in November, maybe, The Best of Beauty and Horror. So if you're into those kind of horror, gore type of coloring books, so that'll be 2 or 3 of those coming out by the end of the year. And there's a Harry Potter coming out. All of these are within the next 3 months, and I don't know what I think about. I loved Harry Potter, and like enough that I could even read the entire series again. I like young adult fantasy. I've read a ton of that kind of stuff, and I really enjoy all that. I don't know what I think about coloring pictures from that. It might be kind of cool, so I will definitely be checking that out. But let me know in the comments, like, what if any of these books that I mentioned appeal to you. Is there any that you'd like to see flip throughs or me do color alongs in? What are you most excited about? Because I'd be curious to know. Right now I'm leaning towards small victories, because who doesn't love Joanna Basford? And I like the idea of the small concept, because sometimes you just don't want to do a big 2-page spread. The Labyrinth Mythographia book, the Christmas Gnomes, and the Afternoon Tea, I think, are the ones that I'm most excited about. But I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts. So let me know in the comments. Okay, so as I wind down with the Neocolor 2s, I think I'm going to turn it over. I recorded the Adult Coloring Habits tag, which is 10 questions, and I answered those, and then I'll be back with you to talk about the page. So I thought while I colored this, I would do the Adult Coloring Habits tag. And this was, I'm not sure who this was from. I will put it in the description box below, because I wasn't actually tagged in to do this one, but I just thought it would be fun so that we could talk about something. So the first one is, do you have a certain place for coloring? So I like to color where I film. So sometimes I color there, and of course while I'm filming, that's where I color. But I also take my coloring book out into the living room, and I color sometimes while I'm watching TV, or if I go on vacation, I will take it with me there. I usually take at least one coloring book and one set of pencils, and then I can just color at a picnic table, or because we usually go camping or at the lake. So that's where I usually do my coloring. It says, what time of day do you feel most inspired? So I tend to be a little, in my younger years, I was a little more of a night owl, but I tend to be more of a morning person now. I think it's because I was in the military, and then when I got out, I had a lot of jobs over the years where I had to be to work really early. One of my longest jobs, when I ran a cleaning company, I was there by 7 and I lived 30 minutes from there. So I was out the door by 6:30 for over 16 years. And so I've just had to get up early my whole life. So now sleeping in for me is like 8. So I would say I probably feel more inspired in the morning. I tend to treat this channel like my job, and so I put a lot of time into it. And whether I'm researching something or learning a coloring technique or just practicing or editing or whatever I do, I tend to get up in the morning and just treat it like a regular job when I'm not at a regular job. And so I would say I probably feel the most inspired then. The third one is, can you stop mid-picture or do you have to finish it? So it kind of depends on how you interpret this question. So I can stop mid-picture and go out and get lunch or pick it up the next day, but I literally don't have a single work in progress. I don't know why that is, because I'm impatient by nature, and so I'm surprised that I haven't started stuff and then decided not to finish it. But I don't know. I think about which page I want to do quite a bit, and I picture the page in my head before I start it, and I even have been known to like research, like on this page I pulled up a picture of a fox just to refresh my memory as to coloring and stuff like that. So a lot of times I'll do some research that way, so I already have kind of the image in my head before I start. And then so I would say I have to finish it, but just to be clear, I can stop and go do something else and come back to it the next day if I need to. So number 4, do you eat or drink while coloring? Generally, no. I'm not someone that snacks a lot. Now, I do drink water, or sometimes I kind of have a Diet Pepsi addiction. I wish I didn't. I really struggle with Diet Pepsi because there's something about the carbonation in it that I find hard to give up. And I have tried all the fizzy waters, I've tried different things like that, and nothing really satisfies me. And I know that Diet Pepsi is not good for me, and so it's a work in progress. But so occasionally I do have Diet Pepsi when I color. Once in a while I'll have a rum and coke if it's in the evening and I'm winding down and just coloring for fun. But I don't usually color and drink because I don't like how it turns out. So if I am going to relax and have a drink, I'm usually with friends, or if I'm, if we're on vacation and winding down, like at the picnic table or something, a lot of times I'll read. So that's the other thing I like to do. So, and no, I generally don't eat anything because I'm afraid of getting the food or the oils or the grease or whatever on the picture. So number 5, multitasking. Do you do music or TV while coloring? So I touched on that a little bit. So a lot of times I will color while watching TV, and I usually watch things at that time that I don't really I don't care about. And by that I mean, sometimes I like to watch those cooking shows where people are competing and they have to do bizarre things, or sometimes like a cake decorating thing where they gotta decorate a cake and they're competing against each other. So I can color because those are the kind of things that don't require, your full attention. I would never color while watching a movie that I really cared about. So if that makes sense to you at all. So, mindless TV I can do. A lot of times, if I'm filming this and this is a voiceover like it is now, I will listen to books on tape, or I will listen to YouTube, various things on YouTube, almost like a podcast or whatever. True crime sometimes health things, sometimes motivational stuff. I really like a lot of different kinds of things, but a lot of times it's just a book on tape that I'm listening to as well. So the next one I touched on already, it says one picture at a time or multiple. So I am just a one picture at a time kind of person at this point. Now that might change in the future, but generally speaking, I start a picture, I finish it. Number 7, do you only color at home or do you like it to take it on the go? So I would say primarily I only color at home, but when I go on vacation, I do take it. If I just go, I think it was Jennifer Stay. I was listening to one of her videos one time, and she was talking about how she brought like coloring materials with her to the mall. And I'm thinking to myself, how long are you going to be at the mall? I guess because I'm not such a big shopper, that would never occur to me to do that. I don't know. I don't generally take them like on errand running or anything like that. If I have to do an errand where, let's say I take my mom to the doctor or something and I'm going to be sitting there, I will either just YouTube on my phone or Pinterest or Facebook or something like that, Instagram, or I will bring a book. But I'm not going to drag my colored pencils and my books and, I don't know. That's just, I don't know. Just don't do it that way. But I use that time either to watch other people's channels, because I do like ColorTube and I like to watch other YouTubers and see different techniques and different styles and what other people are providing on their channel and what other people seem to like. So I do that occasionally, but anyway, I hope that answers the question. I would say primarily at home, but if I am going extended, like on a vacation, I might take one set of pencils and 1 or 2 books. Number 8, do you try and convince people in your life to start coloring? I absolutely do not. In fact, I primarily don't even talk about my coloring. One, I just feel like a lot of the people in my life, I know what they're into and I know that they're not necessarily interested in coloring, so I just don't bring it up. Occasionally I'll meet somebody and I'll think, oh, they might enjoy this, and I'll mention it to them. People that I know that are crafty or what otherwise. But generally speaking, no. Number 9, do you go back and look at old pictures? All the time. I love to go back. I shouldn't say all the time. I don't do it often, but I enjoy doing it when I do. So it is something that I remember when I started my channel, my son said I could do a giveaway. Like if I finished a page, I could give it away.
And I was like, what are you thinking? No, I can't. It felt like I just felt really attached to it, and I put a lot of work into my pages. And so it's funny, I see on Facebook sometimes people will say, well, what do you do with your pictures? And I see people say, oh, I throw them away, or they give them away, or whatever, which I have no problems with what you do with your stuff. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. It just seems very foreign to me because I just, first of all, I don't know who would want my pages. I don't know that they would appreciate them like maybe I do. So, but at the same time, I used to color cards. And so I would color images, little digital stamps and things like that. And I would do cards. And even then, I get a little coveting of the cards that I make sometimes. But at the same time, I send out 75 cards a year at Christmas-ish. And the response I get from people is so rewarding. People appreciate, in this day and age where all we get is junk mail and bills, when they get that Christmas card that's handmade. I literally have people call me, and I remember one year, I think I've told you on the channel before, I had a stroke. It's been about 7 years now. And that year, I was exhausted. And I just was like, I don't think I'm going to do Christmas cards this year. And I ran into a friend of ours' grandma that I had always sent a card to. She was just a nice lady that, you get to know your friends as family. And I had always sent her a card. And she looked at me and she goes, oh, I can't wait to get your cards this year. I can't wait to see what you do. I look forward to your card every year. And as we left the store, I looked at my husband and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I can't not do it. But it made me realize that people do appreciate things that you do for them that are handmade. Sorry about that. The dog is defending me against, I'm sure, the neighbors. Anyway, I kind of got off topic, but the question was, do you go back and look at old pictures? And I do. And I appreciate seeing my progress. And I just remember what I was doing at the time, or what I was listening to, or I don't know. I remember the good feelings of coloring it. So, yes, I do. Number 10, if you aren't coloring, what other hobbies do you participate in? So, I make cards. That was my crafting world started out, gosh, a long time ago. 23 or so years ago, let's just say, when I moved into my home. My boys were young, so I was into scrapbooking. And so I used to scrapbook, major events and things like that in their life. And I started my second hobby, which is collecting craft supplies. And I would go to places like Hobby Lobby, and I would watch their clearance sale, and I would watch Black Friday sales and things like that. And it was kind of I didn't have much money at the time, and so it was very much a part-time hobby. It was more of an occasional hobby back then, but I always appreciated the challenge of finding things that I could afford and things that were on sale, and then working my pages around those. And then over the years, I have tried different mediums, and I got into card making as opposed to scrapbooking. as the boys got older and as I was doing less of that. I went through a photography stage for a while, and I still enjoy taking pictures, but I was pretty full on back then, where I would go out of my way to go somewhere to take a picture, and I would experiment with all the different shutter speeds and light and all those different things to make pictures. And if you ever see my office, I have a border along the top of the room of all the 8x10s of various photos that I've taken, and I love to look back on those and reminisce about the picture and what I was doing at the time, and just recalling taking the picture and where I was. So photography was big, and then that kind of evolved into the card making. And while I was doing card making, then I started coloring like the images, because I found all these really cute digital stamps. Well, they were all just line art, and so I had to color them. So I really got into kind of Copic coloring, and because I wasn't worried about the page behind me, I wasn't worried about entire images. Though if you watch my first completed page, I do show some Copic coloring that I did, both the digital images and like in a book. And that was Mitzi. It's an interesting name. I think it's Aurora Wings is her, like, her channel name or whatever. And I did some pictures with Copic, and that was kind of how I got into this. And so it's only been in the last year or so that I've really gotten into adult coloring as an actual hobby. And then I'm a very avid reader. I am constantly reading. I love to learn. So whether reading books or watching podcasts, watching YouTube, I just like to learn. So anyway, that was the adult coloring habits tag, and I hope that you found that interesting. So here in a second I'll set a big part of the remainder to music, but I'd like to take a moment and tell you how much I appreciate each one of you. If you're listening to this, that means that you've listened to me ramble for over an hour, and I hope that you find some value in my channel. And if you have suggestions on how I can improve, please feel comfortable kindly telling me in the comments, or you can always email me. It's jazzydoodledesigns@gmail.com. So just my channel at gmail.com. You can always email me, and I would love to hear from you. But I'd like to ask a favor too. If you do find value in the channel, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting. You can also, this was a helpful tip that I didn't know for a really long time, but when I would find something on YouTube, sometimes it was at a time when I didn't really have time to watch an entire podcast or color along, because I only had 5 or 10 minutes while I was popping on YouTube, but I would see something that I wanted to get back to. If you click on the 3 dots, like if you're on your home page and you see something that you want to watch later, you can click on the 3 dots on the right hand side just below the video, and you can, there's a save to watch later, or you can save it to a playlist. So sometimes, I would maybe see a recipe or a cooking thing that I wanted. So I had a playlist for those kind of things and another one for color alongs. But you can always just click on that save to watch later, and then later on when you have more time, you go into your watch later thing on the left hand side. Like when you go into YouTube, if you go to the left hand side, you should see it there. If you don't, click on the 3 straight lines, and that'll give you more options. That'll open up your menu, and then you should be able to see it on this save to watch later. That really, it does 2 things. One, you can always go back to it and find it again, but it also helps me because then YouTube thinks that you find it valuable enough to watch. So I hope that's a helpful tip for you, and that you don't think I'm just being self-serving by telling you that. But it has helped me a lot because oftentimes I find stuff when I don't have time to watch the whole thing, but it interests me, so I can pop it there, because then later on my old brain is tired and it's like, what was that thing I wanted to watch? And I'm lucky if I can even remember the category. So anyway, that was helpful for me to store those there. Plus, then I don't have to think about it later. Do you ever go into Netflix and you're like, you spend more time looking for something to watch than actually watching it? I've had that happen. So that's where those save for later things help me a lot, because I swear when I know what I'm going to watch, I see 3 things that interest me. And when I'm looking for something to watch, I can't find a dang thing. So, really sorry about the phone. I turned it off and then I turned it back on because I went outside. So, I hope I'm not freaking you out on the phone thing. So I'm just finishing up here, just adding in a little bit of details. Here I decided that on the left-hand side of this lantern, like we talked about, I just wanted it to have a little bit of that yellow glow. I felt like it looked odd with no glow on that side, like the lantern would only glow on one side. So I just put a little bit there. And then the same with underneath the windows. You know, if I felt like I wanted a little more color to spill, then I would use that eraser and a little bit of yellow. But the rest of this is just kind of touching it up. Here I'm using Sparkle Pop. I debated on using the silver Sparkle Pop, and that very first star I had kind of went over it a little bit with the blue, and so I decided to use the white, and I really liked how that looked and decided I would just keep the stars white. So I went over all of the stars, so I tried to eliminate the black line so that I didn't have the outline. But that's all I'm doing here, is just going over the stars, and then I will go over the lines in the moon. I feel like that kind of adds, you could add a little bit of a cream color right there to the moon. I chose not to add the yellow into my moon there, just simply because I chose to make the moon blue as opposed to yellow, but I don't think it would look bad. The other thing is I will say that once you go over a line with the white, with a gel pen like this, if you go over it a second time, it will literally take the white off. You can see that little line right there. And so what I find helpful when I'm coloring lines is to actually almost do little tiny dabbing motions over the line as opposed to strokes over the line. So it's almost like you're dotting the line, but you're doing it, you're kind of doing a stroke while doing the dot, if that makes any sense at all. But I found that helps cover those lines better than if you just do the strokes. Now, as far as where to put white, this is something, I mean, technically, no professional artist is going to use a white gel pen to pop in, you know, lines on a glass bowl or something like that. They will do it a little more subtly. But I find that And a lot of people do it. So this is not me saying this is a bad way to do it. I do it. You can watch as I do it on this metal. And once again, I'm slightly out of camera and I'm sorry. But you can see where it makes it look a little shiny. It makes it kind of pop a little bit. But as far as like, where do you put those? That's just kind of a matter of preference. Some people only put one little touch of that. Other people use a lot of it. And so I think it's just a personal preference. So when you see me do this, I try and put it on a place where I feel like the light would hit. Like so on curves and that kind of stuff. But, and like on the tips of things, I feel like the tips would be a little bit shinier. I do tend to run a little bit of a white down the sides of the windows. And like right there, it just makes that look like the light's hitting it pretty strongly. But I don't want you guys to fret. Here's the thing. As you grow, as I grow as an artist, I will get better at this. Maybe I'll take a class where someone teaches me the proper way. But I think we get too hung up on things like that, and we're so afraid of doing it wrong that we just don't do it. We just don't color. And I think that's a big disservice we do to ourselves. So believe me, there are better artists out there, and there are people that'll look at my page and say, well, that isn't where you put the white line, or that isn't where the highlight should go. I'm okay with that. I'm willing to take their constructive criticism if they're nice about it, because I would love to learn. But until then, I'm going to throw caution to the wind and put some white dots down. And if it looks funny, I use my finger and I wipe it away. But I'm just saying, free yourself, guys. Have fun. This is a page, and I really like this page. It's one of my favorite pages in the book. And I was a little nervous doing it. And did it come out like the way I wanted it to in my head and be something that if I put on, the channel, people are going to be amazed and awed? No, but I think people are going to appreciate it and say, oh, that's a nice picture. And I'm okay with that. And I think we all get so wrapped up that we want an award-winning picture that we just put a lot of stress on ourselves. And so just have some fun. That's what I say. So anyway, I've blathered on. Please jot me a comment. Say hello. I love hearing from you guys. It really makes my day. And until the next one, I'll see you then. And look for another poll that should be coming up pretty soon. Talk to you soon.